Are we ready to go? Okay. Test. There we go. Okay, thank you. Call this meeting of the Community Issues Committee meeting for Monday, May the 4th, 2020 to order. I'll start with the acknowledgement statement. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. The City of Lethbridge is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. My name is Councillor Jeffrey Kaufman. I am beginning a 6-month term as Deputy Mayor. Councillor Parker is going to be the acting mayor for 6 months as well. I'd like to thank Councillor Crowson and Councillor Carlson who came through this process. Councillor Crowson, of course, chaired the CIC committee meetings for 6 months. Thank you for that, Councillor Crowson. And as per our bylaw, the Deputy Mayor chairs CIC and Finance Committee. So that is why I am sitting in this position.
Deputy Mayor, if I may.
Absolutely.
I just want to, I have to leave at 4:30, so if anybody sees me leaving, it's not that I have another commitment, so I just thought I'd let you know. Thank you.
Absolutely. You had expressed a personal commitment afterwards. That's not an issue at all. We are running a little behind, and I do apologize for that. I have a resolution from Acting Mayor Parker. Be it resolved that the minutes of the Community Issues Committee meeting of City Council held on Monday, April 27th, 2020 be approved by, and the Deputy Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to sign the same. Acting Mayor Parker.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. If there's any issues in regards to the minutes, I would call the question, Deputy Mayor.
Members of Council see no errors or omissions. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Any opposed online? Hearing none. That's approved. The adoption agenda, that the agenda of the Community Issues Committee meeting of Monday, May 11th, 2020 be adopted, including all communications as submitted by the City Clerk. City Clerk, is there any additions to the agenda?
Yes, Deputy Mayor. There's 2 additions to the in-camera agenda. There'll be number 5.4, Recovery Lethbridge, verbal, and 5.5, Personnel Matter, verbal. Thank you.
Thank you. So the adoption of the agenda as amended. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't have my mute button handy. Unless there's anything further from the City Clerk or members of the Council, I'll call for the vote.
Question's been called. All those in favor? Opposed? Any opposed online? That's carried. Thank you very much.
Mayor, I suggest we do a roll call. It's a different meeting.
Absolutely. My mistake. Roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Councillor Higgin.
Here.
Councillor Morrow. Councillor Marashiro.
Here.
Councillor Parker.
Here.
Councillor Campbell.
Present.
Councillor Carlson.
Present.
Councillor Crowson.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Kaufman.
Present.
Mayor Spearman.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. My apologies for missing that. We have 2 presentations in front of us this afternoon, so we'll start with the first presentation. Just go back to my agenda here of the ENMAX Center Operations Review Update. Mr. Galucci, Ms. Norrisworthy, and Mr. Ginther. Can we, since we are an hour and a half behind schedule, can we make the assumption that members of council have read the KPMG report and have read your presentation as well? And is it okay to touch on highlights? We can flush out details through questions if that's required. Excellent. Excellent. That's all we ask, is that you try your best. Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Okay, while we're loading the PowerPoint, I'll do a quick introduction for council sitting as CIC committee this afternoon. This is the second of 3 updates coming from the KPMG operational reviews. We 2 weeks ago, we saw transit come. This week, or today, will be the ENMAX. 2 weeks from now will be facility services. I'd like to introduce the members of the ENMAX team that have worked so hard in preparing this update for council. We have Kim Galucci, the general manager, Jen Norsworthy. The gentleman in front of you at the podium right now, you might not recognize as he is out of uniform, but Drew Ginther works for our fire department, and why I tapped Drew on the shoulder as part of the team to undertake this is Drew's background was in commercial lending, so he brings a perspective in-house here that is valuable to the way that we look at the ENMAX, which the #1 recommendation from KPMG was to run it more as a business. We also have in the audience today with us Peter Anholt, the general manager of the Lethbridge Hurricanes, and Mr. Ron Sakamoto from Golden Gold Productions, who we have worked together with in bringing this forward, both as stakeholders and experts in the field that have been in arenas of this size, communities similar to Lethbridge across Canada. So without any further, we'll let Drew take over, and then he'll pass it off to Kim to finish up. Any questions you can ask any members of the team, including Mr. Sakamoto and Mr. Anholt.
Here to provide a presentation regarding the operational review, the KPMG recommendations, and how the ENMAX Center is implementing them. So our presentation is broken into 6 sections. A quick review of KPMG, their findings and their recommendations, research comparison on the venues and governance models, governance options, recommendations, ENMAX Center summary, and key additional items. KPMG review summary. KPMG touched on a number of different areas. The overarching areas and recommended changes are summarized on the screen. Operate as a for-profit business. Develop a for-profit business plan, which Kim has developed and we'll be discussing later. Operate with limited tax support by 2024. KPMG does indicate in their timeline that recommendations could be implemented by 2022, in turn affecting savings along the way. Demonstrate value for money through performance measures, and of course the 8 KPMG recommendations. To refresh everybody's memory, the following are the 8 recommendations from KPMG. Align mandate and governance structure, refocus the management team, exempt current casual employees, increase arena revenue, generate parking revenue, increase banquet bookings, increase revenue from ticket services, and the indoor soccer venue. In addition to the 8 specific recommendations, KPMG also recommended that ENMAX needs to change performance measures to fit with the change of operating as a for-profit business model. We do agree with these recommendations, and where improvements need to be made in performance measures are number of attendees per event, revenue per attendee based on the event capacity or per head revenue, event days per year, so basically the utilization of the facility. In the year, that includes step up and take out of the events, and operating expense as a percentage of revenue. In order to verify the understandings of KPMG report, it was felt that we needed more clarification and investigation into their findings. We wanted to take an unbiased look at the venues for comparison. As I'm not an ENMAX employee, I took the lead on researching these operations. We started by attempting to verify the numbers of the 9 KPMG comparators, so we reached out to KPMG to get contact information and the rationale for choosing the comparators which they presented. I was informed by KPMG that they focused on a range of arenas that did not have an NHL team and which they could obtain publicly available information. With the realization that the numbers were obtained from websites, I felt I needed to contact all 9 comparator venues as well as other venues to get a better understanding of operation of venues in Western Canada. In total, I contacted 9 KPMG comparators, additional 8, and attempted another 2 privately owned venues. Working through this process, we took a comprehensive look at operation models. The ones on the left, obviously, are the KPMG comparators. Ones on the right are the additional ones. In order to maintain consistency, I asked the following questions of the venues, the goal being trying to understand their operations. And some of the key questions are, how do you operate? Are you run by a board, private management group, or a city department? What type of grants, subsidies, tax allocation, if any, are provided to support your operation? Do you have a CHL team, a WHL team? How does it affect your operations? Could you tell me a bit about your structure and the advantage and disadvantages, what works well and what doesn't? Through my conversation, there were some common themes which became prevalent. All cities include the following as key areas of importance for their venues: the purpose of economic impact, prosperity in their community, creating a quality of life, developing tourism, and employment generation. Ironically, KPMG completed a similar review of Prince George's CN Centre about 6 years ago. The findings were similar to that of ENMAX. However, the City Council and City Admin indicated it was more than just about profitability, as the venue was important to quality of life, and it also provides economic impact to local businesses within their community. All cities advocate and support their venue as it aligns to the community's values. The community's choice of operation models have been developed based on community priorities. Kamloops, for example, has a couple different city departments which run their venue, and they state it works well for them. Communities who own and operate the venue have more control over the venues and assets, and they're typically better cared for. No two venues are the same, nor do they operate the same way. SaskTel Centre has a seating capacity of 15,000 people. They have 3 sports franchises and a trading area of 500,000 people. London's Budweiser Gardens has a seating capacity of 9,090 and city population of over 500,000 people. They have a very successful OHL team. They have not missed the playoffs since coming into the league, and most of their games are sold out. And then on the other hand, you have Abbotsford. They actually had an AHL team. They paid this tenant to leave as it was determined too high of a cost operationally, and it has been proven to be better financially without them. After researching the venues, we summarized the different models in the following slides. Firstly, we tried to find privately owned and operated venues. I was only able to find 2 in Western Canada. They were Kelowna and Victoria, and they're owned and operated by the same individual, Graham Lee of the GSL Group. I contacted these venues, however, no one would return our calls, and was not able to find any additional information. This type of operational model is rare in Canada.
Announcing participant.
Brian Lowen.
City-owned and operated by a private management group like Medicine Hat and Abbotsford. Financially, all cities pay a service fee in various forms to the private management group to operate the facility, and in most cases, the city backs the risk on the events they bid for. Although the cities interact regularly with private management group, it has limited control over decisions of the venue. Typically, the private management companies are responsible for the maintenance and upkeep of the venue during the term of the contract. However, the cities have informed me that maintenance tends to be overlooked as the private companies are more focused on the profit. Any capital improvements to the building are the responsibility of the city. Cities support this model with tax dollars anywhere between $300,000 and $1.2 million. So to be clear, in this model, the city pays the fee to operate, and it also covers any operational losses. In some cases where surpluses are achieved above support level, those tax dollars are parked for future event attraction. The example being, if the budget was budgeted for a $250,000 loss, the revenue recognized a $200,000 loss, $50,000 would then be moved into a fund for that venue in the future. Something to note, Medicine Hat's Canalta Centre was run under this model since opening. However, a recent Medicine Hat news article dated April 14th, 2020 stated the city has taken back control from ASM Global Management Company. City-owned or non-profit-owned, board-managed, like Brandon or Red Deer. Boards, while they provide autonomy to the venue for its operational efficiency, can also create operational problems if they do not follow a strict governance model. Board-operated facilities have additional board expense, a rough estimate being $75,000 a year, and they have limited a focus on community or economic impact. City has limited control over the decisions and directions. The venue would compete with the private sector. Should the model fail, the city would be compelled to either step in or take the operations back. Now, there are 2 examples of this that has happened in the past year. Moose Jaw dissolved their board, describing it as hugely unsuccessful, and brought in a private management group. In January of this year, Westerner Park in Red Deer asked the City of Red Deer for assistance and oversight due to decisions that left it unable to meet financial obligations. In Red Deer, Advocate article dated February 1st, 2020, Mayor Tara Veer stated, "The Westerner Park is too important to fail." And again on March 4th, 2020, Red Deer News Now article, City Council approved $3 million for funding for upgrades for dressing rooms, washrooms, scoreboards, and other video upgrades within this, with the city overseeing the management project. I wanted to provide some additional information regarding board-operated venues. Members of our ENMAX team keep in regular contact with legendary Canadian promoter Ron Sakamoto in order to stay on top of the events industry and also seek advice from time to time. And during a recent conversation, Mr. Sakamoto stated, "Boards are an inefficient method of managing venues in the event and entertainment industry. I would not recommend it." Moving on to city-managed, city-owned venues like Kamloops and Prince George. The venue is controlled by the city and its initiatives. They are supportive of community bids, both in the national and international caliber. The city has the ability to impact the quality of life within their community. Venues have the ability to impact the local economy. The asset is well taken care of for the future benefit of the community. Most venues are seen in the community as a center to attract tourism, and this management model supports their sports franchises and community organizations. All venues are supported through some tax or grant programs provincially or at the municipal level in varying degrees that range anywhere from $547,000 to $1,114,000. That being said, the majority of the funding comes from the municipal level. In Alberta, the only provincial dollars that are provided to venues are venues that hold the exhibition status. Red Deer Westerner is provided $495,000 per year, as it is classed as a Class D exhibition site. Similarly, in other provinces, provincial funding is only provided to those venues which are attached to an ag society or an exhibition board. I'd like to touch on my comment I made in the previous slide regarding the asset being well taken care of for the future benefit of the community. Through my conversations, I was informed that some places have had to make improvements in their venue in order just to attract shows. However, this does not seem to be the case with the ENMAX Center. In fact, I was told by the 2020 Eastern Conference Executive of the Year, I guess that's now WHL Executive of the Year, Peter Anholt, that he said, out of all the Western Hockey League venues, I would consider the ENMAX Center to be one, if not the cleanest, most well-maintained building in the league. As I mentioned earlier, there have been some operational changes to some of the comparator venues since KPMG reported this, since the report was complete. This graph simply shows that there has been a transition of operational models. However, you can see the majority of the venues do remain as city-owned and city-operated. So that concludes our finding of the 4 different operating models. I'll turn it over to Kim for the remainder of the presentation.
Thank you, Drew. I'll be going over the 7 remaining recommendations of review, which we have grouped into 3 distinctive segments that relate to each other: revenue generation, refocused management, and parking, along with additional information on implementation that is important to our discussion today. We have carefully reviewed each recommendation, worked with various organizations and other experts, and developed our version of what the KPMG recommendations can achieve in our Lethbridge environment with our venue capacity in our marketplace. All the adapted recommendations we are pursuing are grounded in the overarching for-profit business model, the 4 key KPMG performance measures outlined earlier, which will assist us in achieving and maintaining our core objectives. The first is revenue generation. While it was deemed by KPMG the ENMAX Center expenses were fairly streamlined, what we needed was to increase revenue. 4 of the recommendations are directly related to this area. The first recommendation is an increase in arena bookings by 10 per year. For this to work in Lethbridge, we require a variety of different events. This cannot just be entertainment and sport. It will require a comprehensive calendar that includes cultural events, speaker engagements, trade events, as well as small and medium-sized entertainment options. We have broken this down into target areas that see our events increase from 28 to 51 annually.
Announcing participant.
This is a higher number of events than outlined by KPMG, but we are increasing primarily in the small to mid-sized and non-traditional event category, while maintaining our larger event count as planned. This allows us flexibility with event bookings to attract and sell more entertainment and educational options and to different demographics. It also allows us to compete more with Calgary and Medicine Hat, our long-term goal to maintain this level. Equally important, we want to increase our revenue per head at each event. This can be accomplished through two approaches. The first is incremental increases in our base concession pricing, moving us to a higher level. And the second is an overall increase in the variety of products available and introduction of more experience-based products to patrons. Lastly, in this area, we would work with the Hurricanes on promotional activities to increase venue attendance, not sold tickets, but actual people in the facility by 10%, which again will also increase our sales per head. KPMG recommended an increase in banquet bookings of 60 to 70 per year. We see an increase of banquet and meetings by 40 events in this area. That would mean we would host a total of 150 events on average per year. This is achievable. It again requires a very focused group, creating, attracting, and securing new events continuously. This would need to include off-site locations, which we have already developed the ability to deliver, and would compete with the private sector in the higher attendance events. It also asks us to address and look at booking the indoor soccer venue where KPMG indicated 30 events could be held. After discussions and ideas were presented to the Service Sports Center, this is not really achievable due to the facility use and time, but we will work with the center as opportunities arise to implement new programming. Although we would not realize the laid out events that were put in place, the revenue outline would be made up by increases we have in other areas of revenue generation, like additional equipment and service rentals that we have not done much of in the past. Oh, next slide. Lastly, under revenue generation, KPMG recommended an increase in ticket fees by 10%. We have already begun to increase ticket service fees and will exceed the 10% mark as we have room to increase compared to other ticketing service operators. We are still protecting local organizations with lower fees, but all others will see these increases. ENMAX Center ticketing services will also be generated through additional revenue through the expanded number of annual events outlined earlier, which at least 50% are ticketed, and as we pursue new organizations for our ticketing services of our overall ticketing revenue. This is a more aggressive approach in competing with the private sector ticketing market, which currently is not local. The delivery of all these revenue growth areas will require a realignment of our team and time, but it is a very focused approach with a substantial outcome. Our estimates are on the conservative side of the budget. As we progress, our net income will improve and grow. Which leads us to our third segment of the KPMG recommendations, a refocused management team. This is significantly important and works hand in hand with the required revenue changes. While they are correct to a degree, a refocused management group is not enough. What is really required is a realignment of ENMAX Center's functionality and an operational change, which was in our original business plan. This creates strategically aligned roles to deliver on specific revenue streams and key areas of the operation, which in turn can then provide even more efficiencies within our expenses. This does not change our lines of accountability or delivery of services from before. Instead, streamlines us into a for-profit business model, ensures business continuity, and delivers a business unit that provides a benefit of a community-focused venue, but with a reduced tax support. Our fourth segment is KPMG's recommendation on generating parking revenue. This was not included as part of the overall revenue generation segment, as it's an important recommendation to identify on its own. Two opportunities exist: daytime and event parking. Through event-based parking, we would be able to sell parking online through our ticket center, our website, or directly on site through credit or debit cards. We would be able to offer package parking or seasonal parking for people, and with today's technology, operate at a low cost that provides us flexibility and minimal infrastructure requirements. Our expectation would be 60% usage initially. I believe it would climb to 80% over time, and overall, we would expect a net gain of $340,000 from this parking program based on our current set of events. Daytime parking is different. Expenses are substantially higher as we require a different system and infrastructure to address all-day or hourly parking. This would also require input from our neighbors, the Lethbridge College, Service Sports Center, Judo Club, and residents. It would still be an overall gain, but at a much lower margin. Our plan would be, if the parking plan was approved, to implement event parking first. Once completed, would then evaluate daytime parking and determine its future implementation. For our purposes today, we've summarized our new budget, providing revenue and expense budget totals, and then applied the impacts from the recommendations we presented. We always begin with our base level of operations, which is the first column. If we had just junior hockey along with rental ice and rec hockey and minor hockey, we would have a tax cost of over $2.4 million. The second column is our current 2020 budget. This is based on our original events and planned revenues and is budgeted at 19% tax support, or is equal to less than 1 cent of every city tax dollar collected. In the third column, you'll see the impact of the new revenues generated from events that reduces our tax support to $1.4 million. This is conservative, and as we improve our revenue streams under the new revenue model, we could achieve better. If you applied our pre-COVID revenue for 2020, we are already going to achieve a reduction of tax support of around $1.4 million. With our new revenue program, we would achieve a better outcome than this. In the fourth column, we would then apply our parking revenue on top of the event revenue generation, which would see our tax support down to $1.1 million. And then in the last column, then in the next column, we would be able to achieve, through our operational changes, cost reduction on top of the new revenue, which would reduce our tax support to $757,600. In the last column, the removal of the annual debenture payment reduces our tax support to roughly just under $300,000. All in all, we can reduce our tax support within the approval and implementation of each segment. So after substantial review in each area, if we were approved to implement the adaptive recommendations, we believe the ENMAX Center would deliver in a number of areas that all center around 6 core outcomes. The first, community value. As a community builder, the ENMAX Center works with local, national, and international organizations, from sport to entertainment and everything in between. We bring both a pride and quality of life to Lethbridge, along with economic impact, tourism, and social interaction and development. Control. Council would maintain direct control over the venue, its asset and direction, from which past experience is very important to Lethbridge. Maintenance. The venue will continue to be well maintained. The ENMAX Center has been able to push its assets to or beyond their life expectancy, and this is due to proper maintenance and attention to those assets for our future benefit. The hurricanes. All governance models other than our current city-operated one requires a new negotiated lease with the hurricanes, a community-owned team that mutually benefits from the support of the venue and the venue from the support of the team. The financial impact that reduces tax support. Every governance model, whether it's privately managed or board operated, has tax support from the municipality at varying levels. You heard the investigation found in real existing terms today that council support anywhere from $300,000 to $1.2 million, depending on the activity level of that venue, and in some cases have additional management fees and additional capital investments. Our sixth deliverable is to support our partners and in turn have our partners support us in our delivery of services. Without partners in promoters, vendors, suppliers, we could not operate as we do at the speed necessitated or overcome the challenges that are presented. We could not bring the caliber of entertainment which reflects back on the quality of life. Developing and maintaining partnerships is a necessity for the venue. I'd like to quickly talk about some key factors that are important in reference to deliverables. Time. We will require some time to achieve these changes. Our plan is comprehensive in nature, requires a series of changes and a timely prioritized sequence that allows us to increase our profitability while reducing our expenses and at the same time maintain our delivery of services. Prior to COVID-19, we positioned ourselves well to having a successful year. The impact of the virus on our business operations means we will have to start from the beginning, ease into things, rebuilding along the way. For example, between March 15th and August 4th of this year, we lost events that would have generated roughly between 1.6 and 1.6 million in top-line gross revenue, not to mention the benefit in economic impact to the community. And while we reduce expenses as much as we can and as quickly as we can, revenue loss impacts we cannot offset this year. But this stoppage also brings an opportunity to begin implementing the changes now, begin setting up for-profit operations, allowing us to begin improving as we re-enter the economy in the near-term future. Overall, we believe we can complete all the changes by 2023, just in time for the new budget cycle. The debenture comes from a 2010-12 renovations, and by the end of 2020, there will be a remaining balance of 2.6 million. There are two options. We either leave it as an annual payment and the tax support is higher while working towards reducing it, or we remove the annual payment and once full tax savings are realized, then pay the remaining balance within 1.5 years with those tax savings generated. This means it could be eliminated by 2024-25. Either way, we will require a decision on the debenture as it impacts all governance model options. Lastly, we want to identify some additional items within the city that could assist us in our quest for continuous improvement. Stabilization account. We look at requesting the creation of stabilization account. The ENMAX Center has no stable revenue of any kind. Each year we begin at zero and build through our programs and revenue targets from there. This would be an account where realized positive gains are transferred to the stabilization account, which then can fund years that revenue streams do not perform as well. And we require flexibility in our for-profit business approach. We looked at many different types of operational structures, like creating a municipal corporation or arm's-length body, but we found that would only complicate processes and the respective cost structures would be much higher. By utilizing resources like risk management and solicitors that are available to us benefits the operation the most. But within this structure, we require flexibility to operate as needed, especially with internal departments and in areas of revenue generation where we can enhance our opportunities and control expenses. We do not have a budget line if there is no revenue. As said before, we need the ability to form partnerships, which are critical to our future, and the ability to create innovative ideas with these partners to benefit our future operation. So in summary, after reviewing all the information, discussions with cities and other key people, we have found that Lethbridge requires a Lethbridge-made solution. By looking at the adapted recommendations, the deliverables, controlling costs, building efficiencies, and generating new revenues, and through a plan of continuous improvement, operating as a for-profit business model, and supported by both SMT and Council, we would achieve a balanced approach of reduced tax support, similar or better to other governance models, operating in our for-profit business model, but providing direct control while still delivering a vibrant, community-focused center. This decision is yours. On behalf of the ENMAX Center Review Team, we'd like to thank you for your time today, and we look forward to any questions.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for the presentation. Appreciate that. We do have questions. I'll start with Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, gentlemen, for the presentation. If I can, first couple questions to, I think it probably Mr. Lucci, dealt with parking. You talked about two options there. What types of charges are those based on? If you can answer that now or send that to me.
That's based on applying a $5 per vehicle charge, taking our current events at about 60%, and then...
Yep, so it was $5. I just didn't see a...
Oh, yeah. No, it's a $5 charge. Actually, be $4.75. You have to take the GST out of the 5. So.
Oh, nice. And is that pretty... every other community I go to that has these type of venues, I always pay parking. Is that about the same? I think it's pretty close to what other communities charge?
Yeah, communities are kind of all over the board. The larger cities course, charge considerably more. And then the smaller communities they're all within that area. Anywhere from 4 to 6 is what we've seen. The larger city centers like Calgary and Edmonton are more like 20. And then there's off-site private people charging parking for areas that are somewhat in between there.
Right. Thank you for that. And this is probably to the city manager or designate, probably. I've talked with some of the residents around the ENMAX, and they talked about parking. If it was paid at the ENMAX, they're already experiencing overflow parking or people just wanting to park off-site. Is there a residential parking permit program, I think that's what it's called, in place for any of those neighborhoods already? And is that something that would have to go hand in glove with this?
Mr. Hawkins is not here necessarily to answer. Or maybe would be Tony. Do you know that answer, Tony? With respect to residential parking permit zones? Is there one in that area, in the Tudor Estates area? I don't believe there is, but
There is one for the
Is there?
college, yeah.
Okay.
There's a permit parking for
at the college, but not in the
because
residential?
of the college, yeah, sorry. So it's during the day. I do not know if it extends into the evening. That would be the...
Yeah, because often there are, restrictions on that about the timing, and so probably some changes would need to be made, I anticipate.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Carlson. Mr. Galucci, I have two questions. The first one is uncomfortable, and I'm going to apologize for it up front. The second is a little bit more forward-looking. What was holding you back from operating as a business prior to the KPMG report?
Oh, that's actually a very good question. We have been spending the last 4 years developing, it's actually kind of a unique timing situation. The KPMG report kind of came as we spent the last 4 years developing and seeing areas of growth and where could we operate and where could we grow. So today we can operate catering almost anywhere in the city. We have tried to do things at the stadium and a few other places and learned what we can and cannot do successfully. We've also spent a lot of time in the ability of what can we change to make things a little bit better each time, getting a little bit better. So as the review came on, a number of these things were already part of our original business plan that we were going to try to implement as well. So it kind of went hand in hand with us being able to talk to them about what we can do and how we can move forward. The parking one was always one that we wanted to bring forward, but it seemed to be a little bit of a hesitation because we needed to do other things first. So I think that we would have started to move in this direction with or without the KPMG report was our plan.
Thank you. So what you're proposing here is a restructuring in terms of how we approach this particular facility. Are you doing things internally regardless of the outcome here or the outcome, the direction from council to ensure that you're capturing these sort of innovations, this creativity moving forward?
Well, we've definitely captured it and we're ready to move on it. The governance model, though, almost drives the rest of the recommendations. Without the governance model, it doesn't, certain things, would you implement them if you were going to go with a private management company? You may just hold off and wait and go the other direction. But if we were given approval to proceed with our implementation of things, we would definitely move on them.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hagan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. My questions are more, we were talking about a little bit about life cycling of this building. I think 2028 is when the last time we did renovation is kind of the end of life for this building. Supposedly, I know that we're do well with upkeeping, et cetera, but 2028, is that, maybe Ms. City Manager, does that sound right? 2028 is supposedly when this building life is up?
I'd have to tell you somebody, I don't have that
I can answer it, yeah.
Thank
that
you, Kim.
is. Yep.
Is 2028?
2028, 2029 in there. So it's just that the building is, the renovations are great and that, but sooner or later, you just can't expand the power needs, you can't expand the roof, yeah, that is
So an
correct.
anticipated cost of hundreds of millions down the road here to repair this
Yeah.
if we own it.
Yeah, so Medicine Hat built theirs, I think, and I don't know, it's somewhere around 80 million. So it would probably be around 85, 90 million, I would guess, depending on the time frame, what other projects are going on and that type of thing.
So it's still something that would be obviously something in a CIP, a tax supported, of course. Next question is a paving cost. We talked about charging for parking there, which is a pretty important decision. I think it seems like that's what everybody is doing. But in conversations in the past, charging for that would cover the $12.5 million that we've got put out to actually have this CIP project done. Are we thinking different? I'm not sure if somebody can answer that question now or maybe bring it back. Because you sound like by charging we're helping the ENMAX, but I'm wondering, we've also got a paving cost here in the 2018 to 2027 CIP of over $12 million. So I didn't know if the money was going towards that or if it was going, I don't know, the city manager, if you don't know, or a designate, if that could be passed on and brought back to council when we know that information?
Well, this is proposed to reduce our tax support. So that money would go towards exactly that, reducing our annual tax support. We could probably raise it $1 or $2 and then look at applying that to the parking lot renovation.
So the tax support for the ENMAX, of the functioning of the ENMAX, and to remove that for a cost recovery model. But then we've still got a tax support of $12.5 million for a paving of that's just what my concern was. So maybe if in the future, if that could be brought back to council where we're planning, because if I recall, what we are going to do is charge parking to pay for this lot. But if it's going towards ENMAX, then that's what I'm just curious to know. So if that could be brought back.
So that project would have to be brought back that was not approved in the capital improvement plan? Yeah, so it would have to be brought back with the financial strategy attached to it, which could include this, or there may be some other things. Mr. Van den Heuvel, did you want to add to that? Okay.
That's good. Okay. Yeah, I see it's not approved, but it's something that we've been told that is going to have to be done pretty soon too. So it's just something to be cognizant of. That's all for now. Thank you.
Councillor Hagan, thank you, Councillor Hagan. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. Since you're standing there, I just, one of the recommendations is from KPMG is to say, well, we want to have more events to bring in more revenue, but then with more events, there comes more risk. How do you don't know for sure that an event coming to the ENMAX is going to be a money generator. How do you approach something like that?
Well, we approach it we would approach it how we approach all our events today. We tend to look at the marketplace, we evaluate it. We have discussions sometimes with our friend, Mr. Sakamoto, to go, do you think this will work? He's always been great at giving us some advice on where we think things will go. Over the past few years, we've been very careful. We've been pretty successful at not losing on anything. The focus here would really be on our special events, creating events where we have more control. And the focus would also be on our smaller to mid-size events, which are probably a less risk. So then what happens is if you had a problem, which sometimes you get all the best information and you still can't make that work, you can probably absorb it and keep going and get another one to offset that one. So it's the big ones that can really hurt you. If you have a huge guarantee and are really struggling and the loss is big. So that's not where we're heading with these. We believe we need to stay in that small to mid-size range because also Lethbridge can only support so many large events. You could bring 20 in, but people just won't go to 20.
And so I guess, I mean, ultimately, it's not necessarily just concerts, like you say, it's beyond that.
Yeah, it's really got to be a strategic focus across the board. So we sat down and said, all right, what do we need? We need, we need some comedy, we need some concerts, we need, even within the concerts, you need, country and rock, and then we want to do some special events and maybe some speaking engagements. So it would be a variety of different events that we bring in to ensure that we're drawing from different demographics, different businesses. We're not going to the same pockets all the time.
Can I just ask, has there ever been any conversations about, restaurants that are, real high-endish restaurants that populate the ENMAX, creating some kind of revenue that way? Has that ever been?
No, we've looked at food and beverage as a third parties coming in. That we would still continue to look at always. It's just a matter of, it creates two different things for us. One, you lose control somewhat of having certain things for certain groups. The other part, though, is you also have a third person, so your prices really go up, because now you want your percentage, we would require our percentage, plus they would want their percentage of profit, plus you'd have to pay everyone. So, and ours is a little bit tougher in the sense that we aren't open all the time. So you really need access to the building. It's not separated off, so we tend to operate more ourselves in the catering world than in our regular restaurant world. So we let the restaurants in the private world do what they do and hopefully flourish from our events, and we kind of stick to the catering side.
One more quick question, if I may?
Mr. Sakamoto has something to add to Kim's response
sure.
there.
Mr. Sakamoto, go ahead.
And you
Mr. Mayor, councilors, I'd just like to add that this building is one of the best buildings in Canada. I don't think this building will last a lot longer than 8 years. I mean, I do shows on every building in Canada, and I got to tell you, and Mr. Anholt will say the same, whether it's for hockey, concerts, or whatever promoters do, this building is one of the best. I'll tell you another reason why. We're the only building of this size that has a system which holds 2,500 with a curtain. And now with Mr., I think it was your idea, we have another concert that'll hold 1,200 with a curtain. And so this building here can hold a concert of 1,200, 2,500, and 5,500. And that's the only building in Canada that is set up for this. And it's an unbelievable setup, believe me. And as we make our living doing it, I would not put the same show on in Medicine Hat as I would in Lethbridge, because I do not have a 2,500 seat curtain to curtain off, because it's wide open and it looks really stupid. So you have something here that's really unique. And because of councils before or your input, this building here is an awesome building. And not only, I mean, you say 8 years, yeah, you may have to do the paving or whatever, but that inside of that building is pretty awesome. So, Mark, or Councillor Campbell, I know what you're saying, build a restaurant. Well, I don't think a restaurant business is one to get into. You're going to have 50% of the restaurants here go broke in the next 6 months. It was said in Edmonton that that's about the same, because I do shows in Edmonton, that's what's going to happen up there. And they're going broke right now. And so with this virus that we don't know anything about, I'm not setting for any shows till May of 2021. And a lot of promoters, I mean, I can withstand that because I have no debt. But some promoters aren't going to be able to withstand that. And to bring shows after shows, yeah, we can bring shows, but if it's not successful and we're not getting support, or the people have not the dollars. That's another thing. We don't know how many people are going to go. And until there's a cure for this virus, I'm not putting on any shows because I'm not going to put anybody at risk. My staff, the people that come to the shows, or anybody. But I just want to say that, you know, we do have an unbelievable building here, and I think it's going to last more than 8 years. Because it's a better building than the new one in Medicine Hat.
Thank you, Mr. Sakamoto. We'll let our colleagues in Medicine Hat know that, too.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell, you had another question?
This was probably for Mr. Ginther. Obviously, Mr. Sakamoto has said what a great building we have in terms of operational-wise, because you compared a number of arenas across the country. Would you say that there is one that has the gold standard as far as how they were able to exist and have the governance model that was just working to what you would say is probably one of the best in Canada? Is there something like that?
Well, thanks for the question. I guess I would have to say that there is no gold standard. It is what works well for the community. That's basically what it comes down to. There's no, as I said before, no two venues are operated the same way. You might have a private management company that operates one way in London, Ontario, but down the road in Kitchener, they might operate a little bit different. So it's the contracts that they negotiate between the city and the private management group. And then when you know, when I talked about Kamloops has 2 city departments which runs their venue. So every place is a little bit different. I don't know that there's a true building that is the same. So that's the best I can answer.
No, thank you. Thanks very much.
Mayor Spearman.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. I think really to the event hosters, do you think the $5 charge for parking will affect attendance?
Mayor Spearman, no. Almost every arena in Canada has this parking. Calgary's going to go up to $25. I don't know how I guess the Flames need the money, but, you know, it's a part of the making of money on a building in the city. Just like parking on the street. You got to park at the ENMAX to go to an event, right? And you make money parking on the street. And yeah, you get some bitches, I guess. But guess what? At the end of the day, you know, the city has to make some money. And what Kim said, it's going to cost us 1 cent, the taxpayers. Well, why don't the taxpayers pay 5 cents, and the ENMAX will make a lot of money? So if you up and put in parking, I have no problem with that. You know, I have no problem with that.
Mr. Anholt, any issues with the hurricanes and parking? And what happens in the WHL in your experience?
Great question. I think there's a real variance when you go down the Q3. Calgary, Red Deer has it. Edmonton has it. There's lots of that don't have it, but I think it's inevitable, Mayor. I think we're, as Kim and I talked about today, as long as there's a plan in place and we can plan accordingly, I think there's always going to be an initial reaction to your tickets initially, but I think it's inevitable, and I think we've accepted that as an organization.
Thank you. And Mr. Gallucci, you alluded to it in your answers to Mr. Campbell. When we go to some other arenas like Medicine Hat and Red Deer, they have private vendors selling a variety of foods. And you sort of indicated that it would mean lower returns for the ENMAX if you had to share with third-party partners. So franchisees and increased variety of food options is not in the future?
I wouldn't say it's not. I'd just say we would carefully look at it and analyze where we can and where we can't make that work. So we're open to it, definitely. It's just a matter of, does it work for the vendor? Does it work for us? And can we all make money at it and still have a reasonably priced product?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Councillor Croson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you all for your presentation and for thoroughly and responsibly looking at the KPMG recommendations. I love whenever I see a report that comes with KPIs, key performance indicators. And my first question is about that. I'm sure that Mr. Ginther who would answer that one. You have there some measurements you want to do, attendees, revenue per attendee. I'm interested in how you will confirm the targets. So if your revenue per attendee, your head per revenue, how are you setting those targets? What's your process?
Thanks for that question. I spoke to it, but I'm going to defer this to Mr. Gallucci.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for that question. It is the basis of what we were looking at. So what we're going to do is measure it against a number. So one of them is how many event days in a year, which was definitely something we want to increase. And so what we would do is start with our base of 2020, or not 2020, sorry, 2019, and then build from there out. And then we would look at each area. So some of them are based by capacity. So if we have a 2,500 seat capacity, then we're looking for a certain revenue generation per head. So if we can generate $15 per head, then we are looking to increase that. So our benchmark would really come out of 2018, 2019. From there, we would continue to start to build on each area. Some have variables in them. If you have a young country concert, that is considerably different than a Broadway show like Chicago, where people actually stay seated. They don't really move till intermission. So your revenue per head goes down. So we would compare it by segment, but as long as we're meeting the benchmark and then exceeding that benchmark each year would be our goal. So each of those benchmarks would be set up prior, and then we would look towards comparing them year to year.
Okay. Thank you. So often we see KPIs but no idea about how to set the target, so I appreciate that you've given some thought to that. My next question is actually about partners. One of the things within the city, there are other departments. There are departments looking for meeting spaces, departments looking for food services in various ways. Do you have a plan for cooperating with other city departments related to revenues, et cetera?
Yes. Yeah, they would be just like all other places. We would start to initiate sales, put together packages that we could accommodate people. We now have the capability to deliver and set up, so we would look at those various ways of what functions work for what city departments and market through that.
Okay. And my last question, if I may, Deputy Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Your building is called the ENMAX Center. Is there any chance to make money through naming opportunities, or is that name, do we have a contract for the name? I'm always looking for ways to make more money.
Yeah, no, we actually have a contract with ENMAX Corp. They are they're our brand name sponsor. That extends to 2023. We have a very good relationship with our naming sponsor. We like working with them quite a bit. Them being an electrical utility is great in times like this because everyone needs power. And it's been a really good relationship. So we would see that possibly growing or looking for other opportunities. So there is other opportunities within the building to name other products, and that's really where we would start to head.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, is there anybody else in the queue? Any additional questions for our guests or members of council? All right, seeing none, thank you very much, gentlemen. I appreciate that. If you can have a safe distance seat in the gallery, we will deal with the resolution. Resolution from Councillor Hagan. Be it resolved, the Community Issues Committee accept this report and presentation for information And further be it resolved that this item be forwarded to the June 1st, 2020 regular meeting of City Council. And further be it resolved that Mr. Galucci, Ms. Norsworthy, and Mr. Ginther be thanked for their presentation. Councillor Higgin.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you again as they're strolling out for the presentation. I think we've got the information that we were looking for, and if we have anything more, I'm sure Mr. Vandenheuvel and his team will be able to get those questions back to us. So with that, if there's no other questions, I'd call for the vote.
Any additional comments from members of council? Hearing none, question has been called. All those in favor? Opposed? Any opposed online? Hearing none, that's carried unanimously. Members of council, it's 5 p.m. Did we want a 5-minute bio break? Does anybody require that? I'm seeing a very anxious nod from one, so we will take a 5-minute break. Be back here at 5:05. Thank you. We still have members of council online.
I'm always on the line.
Yeah, I'm here.
Excellent.
Sadly.
Let's begin then. We have quorum. We'll move to item 4.2, quarterly report to City Council, the Watch Community Peace Officers and Police Crisis Team. We have Inspector Lawrence with us. Inspector Lawrence, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, or we might be in the evening already, I'm not sure, but I understand we're a little behind, so I will condense this the best I can. Just quickly, I'd like to introduce on my right here, Watch Manager Jeff Cole, and I have Staff Sergeant Christy Woods behind me, and they'll be able to assist come question time if you have any questions at the end.
Deputy Mayor, are the mics on?
1 moment, we'll check. Is your microphone on?
So, yeah, it says on. Let me talk a little closer. Is that better?
Thank you. Can you hear
Sorry.
me now, Councillor Carlson?
Now we can. Thank you.
Excellent.
Sorry about that. All right, so this is just a review of the...
The minute a train goes through.
I'll try and find an in-between here. How's that? Can everybody hear me okay? All right. So this is the Q1 2020 report of the Watch Initiative. And we'll, like I say, we'll just do a quick review of some of the slides that I understand you had the package previously, so you may or may not have had a chance to review it. But the nature of the initiative has not changed since the previous presentations. Civilian operated volunteer program, increased presence downtown, community engagement, and the eyes and ears for the citizens of Lethbridge, etc. And we'll just move on to the funding. It is funded based on taxation, and you can see that the budget for 2020 was $601,722. Moving on to the operational timeline, on the top you'll see what the proposed timeline was. And unfortunately, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the volunteer program was suspended, I guess about the third week of March, so our timeline actually has been suspended there as well. So we hope once the pandemic passes to continue on with the proposed timeline. Moving on to our accomplishments, a lot of this is a review. You'll see there's 1,060 volunteer hours. That's down a little bit from Q4 of last year. A little bit of that will be because the volunteers haven't come in since the third week of March. Continue to do our business checks. The watch manager was hired February 6th, Jeff Cove here. We have new team leads, volunteers selected and were trained, continuing medical and wellness checks, also utilizing other resources, the DOT, Fire EMS, and obviously LPS and Arches. Continue to assist police in locating missing youth, wanted individuals, and proactive foot patrol. Moving on with community engagements, continuing that. Parking meter assistance, still connecting vulnerable persons with services. Continue our monthly developmental training with the team leads and volunteers. Included in this is some new things, scenario-based training, which one, for example, is tactical communication with your radio and de-escalation techniques. I believe last time I passed around the watch brochure, so that's been out. And we're also enhancing our statistical activity measures to help continue to more accurately identify and standardize what the watch is doing out in the community. And we'll just move on to the next slide. Oh, sorry, I missed one here, sorry. As I'm trying to speed through this. So the use of computer or CAD system with the Public Safety Communication Center, and that again is to help capture the activities when we help police, fire, and EMS and the other public services to more accurately report our activities. The watch manual and job expectation has been finalized and completed. Continuing to work with our CPOs to enhance service to the community and continue working with our relationship with the SCS moving forward. That's just a quick overview of the statistics for the first quarter. Not a lot of variation in the numbers, little dips and dives here and there, but I would be curious to see what it's going to look like from Q2 just with the COVID-19 pandemic and with our volunteers not actively out there since March 23rd. So, and just this is another review, what we include in our public service calls. It could be parking meter assistance, directions, loitering help, checks, wellness checks, de-escalation, and other things as found property and assisting businesses. So I just wanted to quickly review how COVID-19 has impacted the watch program. With the start of the pandemic coming in the start of March, we followed direction as dictated by the City of Lethbridge, the provincial and federal governments, and took all precautions to guide and direct excuse me, our volunteers and team leads. And then moving forward, we eventually got to the point where March 23rd, next slide please, that the operations involving the volunteers ceased due to the potential impact on their regular lives, and that there wasn't a need. We didn't think the need didn't balance out the risk to have them out there with the public. And of course, all the volunteers are not out there right now, but they are definitely welcome when this all passes to come and join the team again. So currently, we're operating with the paid team leads and Manager Cove here as we're moving forward. As a result of that, we're covering a smaller area, including the downtown core, with only the team leads, still doing 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day. And still, there are many disadvantaged people in the downtown area who rely on the watch and their members for service requirements, social service requirements, and social interaction, and any resource they might need. One of the tools that Jeff is using is he's connected with a social, I guess it's an app, cell phone app, a SLAP application that keeps him connected with all the agencies throughout the city. So for quick reference there. I can move forward to the risks now, thanks. Risks and challenges that we may see moving forward. Obviously with COVID-19, there's the risk of infection to whoever's out there. The team lead shortage, recruiting, hiring, retention is always an ongoing challenge just with turnover. And with COVID-19, could see maybe negative impact on recruiting and training, and for the enhancement of the summer numbers out there. And just reduce numbers out on the street simply, and some volunteers may not want to return once the pandemic is over. And just moving forward, the next steps. We'll continue enhancing relationships with social partners and stakeholders, continue recruiting for volunteers. We're going to resume our scheduled training once the restrictions are lifted for team leads and volunteers, and continue our information sharing, public awareness, safe walks, and all the other tasks that the watch does out and about. And we're continuing that review of the statistical data. One new thing that we've started to explore is the possibility of changing the uniforms and what they might look like. Just a different style of uniform and colors, ensure no confusion with the police, and that there's no perception of any type of enforcement for the watch. This would be something that wouldn't happen immediately. It would probably be more end of this year 2 of the initiative, and just see where we're at with that before we move forward with that step. And Jeff is doing research on examining what would be appropriate colors to impact mood and different things and how the public would perceive them. And finally, I believe, is just quick financials here. And the year-to-date variance, we're started out over $601,000. Year-to-date, we're 119 budgeted, and we're at 102, or almost 103,000. And that variance of 16,000 you'll see there is associated to team lead salaries mostly, so that's why we have a little bit of variance. And that is it, and open to any questions for the three of us.
Thank you very much. Any questions on the in the queue there, Madam Clerk? Nothing. Any questions from members of council? Oh.
Councillor Parker, Mayor Spearman, Councillor Campbell.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Acting Mayor Parker.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. First of all, congratulations to Jeff Cope on his new position. I know you do a great job of that, so congratulations. Thank you for the presentation as well. And you answered a lot of my questions, because when I went downtown, well, we all drive around downtown, and especially this time, you notice a lot more, for lack of a word, transient people, folks, individuals, people at risk, just because businesses aren't open, so you notice the people that are not partaking in business. And obviously, there's probably a higher demand, or maybe it's just the same amount of people. Have you noticed an increase in transient people in the downtown because of these businesses closing?
No, I'll refer that to Manager Cove here because he's there front lines day to day, and he would be able to answer that more accurately.
So with the less number of people that are using downtown in our total stakeholder group, it appears that we have more transient individuals and homeless and addicted people in that community in our downtown because there's not a mix of all of the stakeholders that are present. So at the risk of saying it's an optical illusion, it's kind of an illusion in that regard. There's still lots of people that are out there that require services from us and that we're providing service for. And the same types of service, although the delivery is slightly different, but at the end of the day, there's the same people that are out there looking for service and looking for assistance wherever we can provide it.
Thank you. And my follow-up to that is, I noticed when I drove down, so when I see the folks in the red shirts, those must be the team leads. That's correct? They're not the volunteers anymore. And the reason why we don't have volunteers, is it by legislation that they can't, or is it just to decide that because this whole COVID-19, the volunteers, no, we don't want you out there?
Yeah, essentially that's it, just for the safety and the risk, and they are volunteers, so we don't want to put them at any unexposed risk they don't need to be, so.
And my last question, if I may, Deputy Mayor, have you seen an increased calls or more of a need for the watch program behind, let's say, for example, the former YMCA since, and of course the issue with the Fritz Sick and all that being a temporary shelter? Have you seen a higher demand in that area?
There's a higher number of people that are there before the center opens at 8 p.m., so they accumulate in the track field that's in there. We actually have more interactions with people who live in the neighborhoods, inquiring why the Alpha House was placed there for sober sheltering, and complaining about its particular location. They have indicated that there's a number of issues with respect to the people in the neighborhoods. But having said that, we also, I implemented, as soon as that started to come to our attention, I implemented checks that go on. So even before 8 o'clock, so all through the day, there are mandatory location checks. So we are there to provide that high visibility presence with the red shirts, so people see that we're there. And honestly, it becomes a deterrent to crime, or people who want to have services are attracted to. They see us there, they know us as the red shirts. I personally have been going out. I make it my business to be out once or twice a week with my people and out there interacting with the public and all the stakeholders that are out there, the business owners and whatnot, and through that area. So I have firsthand experience there. We have not had crimes in that particular area. It's just a matter of what the perception is, because the people that are there are not people that are normally in that particular area.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Mayor Spearman.
Thank you. Clearly, there's an issue with staffing now because of the not having the volunteers. As the weather gets warmer, more likely to have more challenges in the downtown, if you like, with people migrating. Is there a plan, or is the watch involved? How do we deal with that as the weather gets warmer through the summer?
I think we will continue to do what we can do with the amount of team leads and personnel there. Obviously, Jeff monitors that, and if there's certain areas that, say, become more of an area that need attention, he'll adjust his plans definitely to take care of that. And like you say, unfortunately, we're limited by what our staffing is. And hopeful, maybe as we all are within, by the time summer comes around, we'll have our volunteers back and continue recruiting and team leads. So, Jeff, do you have anything else to add to that at all? As far as a specific plan?
Maybe I'll just step in for just I know this is the quarterly report, so it's not.
Sorry, would you mind using the microphone, please? Thank you.
Yeah. We understand that this is the quarterly report, so it's not up to date time-wise as far as today. So I don't know if you're all aware, but we have 3 CPOs that had training suspended because they couldn't go to Solicitor General, and we've actually put them on the watch as a practicum. So that has facilitated the ability for Jeff to have actually 4 operating teams on most days, which is quite a good number, and even able to go into the north side zone. So we're actually well staffed right now temporarily. When and if the CPOs get pulled back to training, we're hoping by that time we're talking about strategies for bringing our volunteers back into the building or back into the watch with COVID mitigation strategies, I guess. So we're hoping that in the meantime, we've been supplemented with manpower, and by time that manpower shifts on back to their training, that by that time we'll have a strategy for getting the volunteers back in the building. Yeah.
One more thing so when I came on board, I implemented access to what stats we gather and utilizing CAD, which is the computer-aided dispatch. So it allows us to deploy people based on time of events and day of the week of events and location of events. And when I developed the patrol areas, which were based on what they initially were, but they were just enhanced based on the types of calls, the number of calls, and when we get them. So we actually have specific times where some of the deployments take place in the patrol areas. So I've broken the whole downtown beat into 5 sub-patrol areas. So those teams that we have now are deployed strategically based on what our experience has been for calls for service, times when we assist the police, and other times where we're able to manage things that are not really police issues that generally get brought onto the police because citizens see something happen. For example, a person who's not conscious and moving becomes a police call, and that was my experience in my previous life when I was a police officer as well. And it allows us to be able to be in the areas where you get the most types of events and things that the people from the watch can manage and are equipped to manage and can deal with effectively. So there's a little bit of strategy that's applied there. Now it's May, and we've started into our summer protocols, but now I'm looking beyond that now to September to what that's going to look like coming through the summer and out of the summer, and how we can elevate our level of service through the summer and carry that on through the fall when the people that I currently have here for the summer go back to school. So it's an ongoing thing.
Thank you. There's an Indigenous group called the Sage Clan. You may be familiar with them. Does the Watch in any way gather information through the Sage Clan? How do we work? Do they work it all together?
So that was one of the first things that I wanted to do in my first weeks in this position. So I've reached out to the Sage Clan. I've actually had a conversation with Mark Braverock, and he's promised me he's going to call me because I want to build that relationship. Now we do some similar things, but there's other dissimilar things that we do. But my belief is that there are complementary services that we can tap into from the Sage Clan or have the Sage Clan tap into from us. And it would be great to have the Sage Clan as another resource that we have to be able to know when they're out, where they are, because people ask us for resources that the Sage Clan provides that we do not. And therefore, which is good, because that means there's a bigger spread of service, because they're two different things, and it allows us to do that. My goal is to build that relationship and build that partnership, which I've reached out as well to Ted Stilson from the Downtown BRZ to build, and I want to work with that so that we can enhance it, and it becomes more of a cohesive, fine-ticking watch to do that service for everybody.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. And I understand the services are completely different, but I think they maybe have relationships with some people that Watch could benefit from. And
absolutely.
I think rather than maybe a bit of I've gone out with the Sage Clan a couple of times, and I think they said that they're, in a way, they're happy that they can have contact with some people who might not feel comfortable approaching the Watch, and as we break that barrier down, I think that would be a good thing. Thank you. Yep.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mr. Cove, sorry, Inspector Cove? Mr. Cove, the Cove man. Since you know, one of the goals of the Watch program was to develop relationships, and since you took over, and now that you actually, well, you've got a smaller group of people, but what are the dynamics that you have found since you've started between the relationships that you have and with the people that you encounter on a regular basis? Has the trust, or has there been trust, or has there been really the belief that they can come to you and resolve some issues? Can you kind of just describe that element of what you do?
So I've been with the Watch since the beginning. So I was a volunteer first for 9 months. And so I had that first piece, and I could tell you that the first bit of it was very standoffish, in that if you talked to the watch, you're in essence talking to the police, that kind of thing. They've come to understand that we are actually a conduit to social organizations. Emergency services, yes. We can get expedient access to emergency medical services, to the fire department, which our people have done, and of course to the police. The relationship is there in that many of the people that are out on the street, actually I should say all of our stakeholders, so whether they're a business owner, people who routinely come to downtown to shop, do whatever, and the people that are on the street know lots of the people, they know me. We have conversations with them. We know each other by name, and so that relationship is there that never used to be there. There are lots of people that are out there now that I regret to say that I didn't build as good of relationships as I could have when I was a police officer, but I have a great opportunity to do that now. And I do that as much as possible. My team does that as much as possible. So they know people on a first name basis. They know the red shirts, actually is what they call us. So they know when they need to have something for whether it's first aid, help connecting with a social agency, those kinds of things. They look for the red shirts, and we hear them say that. I mean, sometimes they're not really happy to see us, especially if it's something that we happen to be there and they're afraid that we're going to call the police because we're interceding on an unlawful activity that we might observe, which of course is something that we have to do as good citizens. But at the end of the day, for the most part, we've been very well received. And to this point, now that we've just celebrated our first anniversary of being out there, there are many relationships that are built and lots of people that I have introduced my family to and stopped to talk to on a regular basis in downtown. And because you see them at street wheelers, those kinds of things. I introduced some of them to my grandson. And I'm around and I'm downtown an awful lot when I'm off duty. So when they see me, they know me, they'll talk to me, that kind of thing. There was even a couple of them stopped when I got appointed manager when I was getting my picture taken for the news release that stopped to congratulate me and that kind of thing. So those relationships are certainly there.
That's great to hear that. The other thing I was just going to ask is, I know that the transit hub can be problematic, and I read that you, as watch members, don't go there because there's security there. Is there a definite can you enhance that? And also, I know that the Galt Gardens bathrooms have opened up since COVID, and is that problematic, or how is that working out?
So for us, for the watch people, of course, we're not licensed security guards. It's a whole different animal. So we have very good, competent security that currently works at the transit terminal in Galt Gardens. We work with them, but we don't have the powers and authority, as that we're a hands-off organization, of course, volunteer-based, as you heard, and we're a totally hands-off thing. So we have relationships. So how this works in a lot of cases, we still go into those places. We don't take a lot of action there because there's people that are actually empowered to do that based on the people who hired them, which is the City of Lethbridge for those particular cases. But we help with the relationship between the security people, because of course they're the enforcement people. They're the people that will make you take your liquor away or kick you out of a place, or those kinds of things, where we don't really have authority to do those kinds of things. So sometimes if they need somebody, they need to know who somebody is, or if they have somebody who's in one of these areas and they need to have them talk to, and we're handy. Or because we still have the watch walk phone that they will call if they need to have somebody come and maybe do a de-escalation or have some kind of a relationship, because they know that if they call the watch, they're more than likely going to find somebody who already has a relationship with a particular individual. Now, that's not guaranteed, and it doesn't happen all the time, but it's likely to happen. So they rely on us for those kinds of things. But we're very careful not to get called into a location that has security for the purpose of doing what the security guards are paid and hired to do.
Right, and congratulations on the one-year anniversary. Thanks. Great.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, is there anybody else in the queue? Any further questions from members of council?
I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor, it's Rob. I had my thing on mute and my computer went into sleep, so I couldn't get my request in. I'd like to ask just one question.
Go ahead.
Mr. Cove talked about wanting to connect more with some social programs in the city. Is that what I heard you say, Mr. Cove?
Yes.
So I'm going to send you an invitation. I'm part of a group in my other job outside of council that we have a group of about over 100 service providers in Lethbridge from a wide range of cross-sectoral employers, and the Sage Group's part of our group, as well as other outreach. So I'm going to send you an email, and it'll be an invitation to our Slack group, and you'll automatically go into our outreach group and the leadership group. So, and then if you need some other information, just get a hold of me.
I'm actually in that already, thank you. Yeah, I've been in that from the beginning. I've actually been corresponding. I did some work with Mr. Kissick from Streets Alive. But I'd be happy to connect with you. I saw that you were in there, and I'd actually be very happy to connect, so expect to hear from me tomorrow.
Well, I actually started it, so I don't remember seeing you get in there. That's funny.
It all happened for, it was
Obviously,
actually,
I didn't.
yeah.
Okay.
I'm in.
That's.
Anything else, Councillor Mayor Sherrill?
No, that was good. I just, stick my foot in my mouth, and then I'm done.
Thank you.
Excellent. We don't expect anything less. Any other members of council? Okay, hearing none. Thank you all very much for the presentation. We'll move on to the next presentation. Number 2, new initiative N38 Community Peace Officers. And we'll just make a change here in body count in the chambers.
You have a body count?
Live body count, fortunately. If you'd like to come to the podium, please, introduce yourself and your colleague, that would be wonderful. And just start right into the presentation.
Sorry? Oh, you do the clicking? Okay. My glasses on. Okay, if we're ready to go.
Yeah.
My name is Dwayne Smith. I'm an acting inspector for the Field Operations Division. I'm here with Sergeant Mike Williamson. He basically supervises the Community Peace Officer program. So hopefully you have any answers or any questions, he'll be able to help you out. So just really going to go through some of this stuff fairly quick at the beginning, because you've been through it. Just that we have a mandate for 15 community peace officers. We're trying to get them to perform duties that a normal police officer doesn't have to do, that we don't need a fully armed officer. Increased presence in the downtown and areas of concern. More proactive foot patrol. We're hoping for a public safety, that people will feel safer, because we do have that out there. And once we get everything in place, to be able to deploy more officers from back to the street as we put some of the CPOs into other jobs if they don't have to do. Okay, I'm sorry about it. Okay, sorry. Fundings from taxation and from the Lethbridge Police Service is $1,366,500. This is kind of things where they've changed a bit. The CPOs, they've been on their own, the 9 of them, since the beginning of November, so into January. We looked at hiring 6 CPOs in February, but we were only able to get 3. They were supposed to go to the police or the Solicitor General College in Edmonton for training, 6 weeks of training, but due to COVID, it was canceled. So we've now, as you heard before, we've kind of redeployed them to the Watch program, and we're hoping to either get them to the program or find some alternative training methods, what we're looking at. We looked at also training them for our bail office, which is the juror office. We've done that, and we're going to be deploying them into that office, which will allow police officers that are right there right now to go back out onto the street. So there'll be 3 of them that'll be redeployed. Our accomplishments is proactive foot patrol, community engagement. Mike here tries to get them out there all the time. He harps on that. They deal with disturbance and nuisance calls, the more minor calls like theft under 5,000, the shoplifting type calls, and deal with panhandling and loitering, kind of the nuisance calls. Also, they deal with the trespassing complaints, public intoxication, and having them there makes it so that police are available for more high priority calls quicker response. And we've also got a couple of vehicles now, a Dodge truck and a Subaru for the CPOs to get around in. Just some of the statistical data hasn't changed too much over the last little bit. We expected a little bit of a drop for March, but I think we're seeing some of our calls for service have been going up for April. And I'm not sure why. We'll have to keep an eye on that, see if there's much of a change. Currently, for our risks, we have 9 CPOs. We're trying to get 15, but it's taking a little longer to get up to that number, just trying to find the right people for the right positions. We also have to consider recruitment by other police agencies. There's agencies that are hiring. We have good people, which makes it very marketable. And there's lack of financial stability. When some of the people come in, they're not sure if we're going to have continuing funding, what's the stability of my job looks like. So that's something we have to be cognizant when we're trying to do attraction and retention of employees. And it's a competitive job market. Things might have changed now with some of the COVID, but good people tend to be scooped up fairly quick. For COVID, our overall call volume, if we're going back to March again, year end was starting to go down, get a little lower just because there's less people out. That has since changed. What we did see a little more is that the businesses that were open were being affected a little more. There's a little more shoplifting and a little more activity going in those businesses. So that's something we had to be cognizant of and deal with. The other part is they're exposed to the COVID-19, just like anybody else that's out there dealing with the public. We have to be aware that they are dealing with people that potentially could put them into, make them very sick. So we're dealing with that. Just our financials, the taxation, like I said, we're at $1.36 million. Budget to date, we're at $391,000. But basically, our variance is $127,143, and that's basically training and wages for the officers that we haven't got in place yet. Our next step is to hiring a recruiting strategy. We've adjusted it, so we're not necessarily training them to be full police officers to move around. We're training them to be community peace officers, which allows us to let them focus on what their actual job is. They're free to apply to be a police officer if those opportunities come, but we're trying to let them focus on what we want them for. Like I said, we had 3 CPOs that were supposed to go to the Solicitor General College. That's been delayed due to COVID-19, but to kind of compensate for some of that, we've done some cross-training at our front counter and for our bail or our holding cells where we can let them be bail officers and allowing a police officer to go back out to the street. Our next step too is continued downtown response. And they kind of work well on their own. As they get more experience, they become more efficient at what they're doing. We also have them look at trying to expand some of their authorities so that they can do a few more things which will allow police officers to be freed up to do other duties. And I think I've talked already that they are being deployed to our bail office. So really quick summary of what's been going on. You happy to take any questions?
Excellent. Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Anybody in the queue? Any questions from members of council? Hearing none, that was excellent. Provided the information we needed, obviously. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And perfect. Then we will move to our third presentation, new initiative N40, Police and Crisis Team, PACT. Are you doing this one as well?
I'm doing this one too.
Excellent. Thank you. You can just continue on
I'm
then.
up here. I might as well keep going. So I'm not going to introduce myself since you know who I am, but I've got a couple of people here with me. Constable Boris in the back. He's part of the PAC team along with Marco Ander. He's with the Alberta Health Services and part of the team. So again, I'll go through this fairly quick. You've seen a lot of it. So our initiative, it's as part of the PAC team. It's police and crisis team, so just basically dealing with people that have some possible mental health issues, and the idea is that we can try and divert them, take the work away from other emergency services, police, get them the help that they need through the right channels. So it is one constable, one Alberta Health Services member. Their idea is to stabilize individuals experiencing addictions or other mental health issues, putting them at the right place when they need to go there. They're liaised with the Chinook Regional Hospital, and they advocate for getting people into, say when we have a Form 10 where somebody has mental health, we try and get them psychiatric care. They can help us through that process because they have the connections and the knowledge for it. They also help connect people to various housing and financial services when needed. They have the contacts in our area. Provide consultation with various community agencies, so they are, if the Crown needs some assistance on how to deal with people, or our members are trying to deal with somebody that's got some issues, they become an information source. And they also monitor individuals for short-term durations until they can connect it. So if we have somebody that's a high flyer where we get a lot of calls, they monitor them, see what they can do to help reduce those calls by giving them the supports they need. Funding hasn't changed anything, $127,300. And really not much for the proposed timeline is that we were going to have one full-time officer funded through the pilot project, and that's what we're achieving right now, so nothing really has changed at this time for that. So they built some relationships with community agencies and support programs within Alberta Health Services. They assist numerous individuals in connecting with these services to try and get them off the street, get them the help they need. And they divert calls, I mentioned that before, they divert calls so that the police can focus on other things other than mental health issues, which tends to be a lot of our calls. Just our calls for service, they're not too much different. Follow-up contacts with clients was a little bit of a drop for some of it, and COVID-19 has a bit to do with some of that because of the lack of connection we can make with people physically, so to come up with a plan to be able to manage that. But other than that, things are fairly consistent at this time. We're expecting moving into April, May, we may see an uprise in mental health issues due to the stressors of COVID-19, job losses, a number of factors that can come in there. So we'll have to wait and see for the next quarter for that. Some of our risks is staff and time constraints. We only have 2 people, so there can be a lot of work. So trying to get all the work we need done can be very difficult. Limited coverage, they just work 8 to 5, Monday to Friday. And most of the work we do is after it's happened, so it's post-crisis, and sometimes recognizing all the factors that are required. It's just not there, or getting that timely help to the people can be difficult. And just limited training opportunities for our people. There's not a lot out there for them to go and pick up on. I'm not really too sure what the variance is here, but Cameron? Just wages, sorry. So not much has changed there. Our next steps is improve our reporting practice to gather statistical information. So we're starting to put more stuff into our records management system so we can actually track better what's going on. Continue collaboration, consultation with our partners, and look for opportunities to develop new partnerships, provide better services. Trying to increase PAC's frontline response during the crisis. So they've been trying to, if we have an issue, say somebody that's got some mental health, needs to go see a doctor or psychiatric care, that they could phone ahead, make contact, and put those things in place before we start taking people to the hospital or determine if they actually have to go there. So that's been a bit of a help. And we're looking at, if possible, increasing staffing to address some of those gaps in service. And so that's down the road. So we've had a small drop in our, I guess we call them FYI, where members are advising us of tasks or of information or people that need help. So there's been a bit of a drop in that. I'm not sure if that's because we're not running into the people or been a bit of a lull. Like I said, we've experienced a bit of a gains into April, and we expect it to become busier. Face-to-face contact, that's ceased. It all has to be over Skype, Zoom, any other kind of a social media application. Starting to see some appearance of delusions related to COVID-19, and then some of that could be due to other alcohol use, drugs, that kind of thing, and kind of a mixture of the stresses that come with that. And we are looking for an increase for it. That was very quick, just kind of a quick overview.
Excellent, thank you very much. First question actually I have, I realize that this is first quarter report, but we've gone through the month of April already. Has there been an increase in requirement for mental health support, just given COVID, the isolation, the demands and stress coming into the department for April? Again, I recognize it's outside the reporting period, but do you have any observational on that at the moment?
Let's defer to Constable Boris. We've seen some, I can just see anecdotally, but they're the ones that are actually taking these calls, so I'll just defer to.
Excellent, thank you.
March, we had a marked drop, as you saw in the numbers there. We usually average about 250 reports reviewed per month, and April was just a hair shy of 300. So it's it's a sizable increase in the reports that are being referred to us to review. And I think it's just an increase as more people are in isolation for longer. There was a bit in there about how people are starting to evolve these delusions associated with COVID-19. So we're hearing a lot of people who are going through all these conspiracy theories. We've heard people think that some people around them have the virus, and they're becoming more paranoid because of that. And we're also seeing people that have said, I am the cure for COVID, or I am the patient one. And you can tell it's on everybody's mind. So it's the people with these mental health concerns, it's just amplified.
Thank you. Intuitively, I figured that there would be an increase just because of the pressure it puts on everybody. So it kind of begs the next question then, given that some of the responsibilities, some of the things that have been going on within the department could actually result in reallocation of physical resources. Will there be any reallocation to your particular unit, at least through the COVID era, for lack of a better description?
Yeah, well, that's we'll have to. So I'd have to defer that to Chief Woods, but that is something that we definitely have to look at. Is putting the resources where they're needed. If we see a gain, and it needs more people diverted there, something we'll have to discuss and actually look at.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Spearman.
Thank you. I believe the last time you reported, the numbers were in the range of slightly like monitored clients. Little over 150. Now we're seeing 171, 177, 184 more clients. Is there a reason? These are people who are causing issues and need to be monitored?
Yes and no. When we identify somebody as having a mental illness or mental health concerns, a lot of times, whether we have direct contact with them or not after that, we'll monitor them for mental health related police contact so that they're not falling through that gap. So if they're consistently exhibiting all these same behaviors and we believe it's mental health related, then we'll triage them and put them at a higher priority, and it'll be somebody that will start really looking at other services we can direct them towards and start case conferencing about these people. And if we don't have that person monitored, then we won't know about all of their police contacts. So they're just people that we want to make sure that we're seeing all their police contacts so we can determine if it's somebody that we need to follow up with immediately.
How many of these monitored clients would require constant support? So they'll always struggle to live independently. So how many of those would?
I don't know that I could give you a number. I know that in our office we have one side of our whiteboard that usually has between 10 and 15 people that are those people that are having almost daily police contact, and we're constantly looking for an opportunity to get that person services. So every time they're in cells, or every time we see them on the streets, we'll ask them, hey, how are you doing? Are you ready to take the next step towards recovery, to making yourself better? And it is a list that doesn't shrink, right? There's always those people, and I'm sure if you've been around the downtown, you know the people that you see all the time, and they have that disruptive behavior. And part of what we're doing now is trying to determine if that behavior is drug related or if it's mental health related, because it's not always easy to determine, because it could be both, right? And if we're having a hard time getting people who are addicted to hard drugs help within the mental health system, because it's almost impossible to determine what the underlying mental health issues are when they're on hard drugs. So we're always trying to look for creative solutions.
Thank you.
Mayor Spearman, Councillor Carlson.
Oh, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I may have answered my own question because I was in response to your question about the rise in calls or incidents, especially with COVID, I was wondering about the emergency funding that was being administered through FCSS here provincially, but I think that's only for charities and not for profits. I'm trying to recall the criteria. I was wondering if we had looked into that to get more funding for these types of programs through that at this point, but it may only be for charities and not for profits. I'm just not sure if anyone's looked into that.
We're not aware of any funding that we'd be able to apply for out of that.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Clerk, anybody else in the queue? No? Any members of council? Councillor Campbell?
Thank you. Just a quick question for you, the frontline worker. How are you doing? I just look at how much work you have to do, and it's never ending. Do you have a sense that there's a light at the end of the tunnel in some ways, or how? I mean, it's a tough job, and I admire that you're doing that.
I think policing in general, you don't look for the light at the end of the tunnel because you know it's going to be all the time. You're never going to run out of calls for service, and we always have to look for the successes, right? The success stories and what we do, and we've had some really good success stories, and that's kind of what keeps you going. I don't think we're going to find help for every person on our board. All of those difficult clients, we'll never do that, but we keep trying in hopes that there will come that day when they say, I've had enough of this, and we're there to just direct them immediately to where they need to go.
Thank you. Good job that you're doing. Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Okay, hearing none, thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation and all the information. You can take a safe distance seat or leave the gallery as you desire. I have a resolution here from...
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I have a resolution from Mayor Spearman. Be it resolved that the Community Issues Committee accept this report and presentation for information, and further be it resolved that Inspector Lawrence, Acting Inspector Smith, Sergeant Christy Woods, Constable Boris, and Jeff Cove be thanked for their presentation. Mayor Spearman.
Well, important information. Important that council receive updates on these three initiatives that were funded as part of the 2019 to 2023 budget process. So with that, I think just ask for council support.
Any debate? Hearing none, question has been called. All those in favor? Opposed? Any opposed online? Hearing none, that's carried. We'll move on to in-camera omnibus resolution from Acting Mayor Parker. Be it resolved that council direct that...
Deputy Mayor, are we going to go back in camera?
Oh, I guess we should probably do that. Yes, we do have to return back in camera, don't we? Thank you. I'll need a motion from member of council then to move to an in-camera closed session. Councillor Hagan, all those in favor? Opposed? Any opposed online? Thank you. We are in camera.